I always thought the day I became a millionaire would feel different, maybe louder, or at least warmer. Instead, I remember silence, the hum of the air conditioner in our apartment, the clicking of her fingernails against her phone screen, the way the light from the window hit the side of her face just right, too bright for comfort, but she didn't seem to mind. She just looked at me like I wasn't even there. "Nick," she said, calm, almost detached. "I want a divorce." That's how it began. With those 4 syllables that didn't echo or crash, they just landed, and everything inside me went quiet. I didn't ask why. Not right away. I think part of me already knew. Or maybe I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Funny thing is, that morning, I'd made us pancakes. Blueberry, her favorite. The kind where the edges get all crispy from the butter. I'd even poured orange juice into real glasses instead of those cracked mugs we always used. I was trying. I was happy. I'd just gotten off the phone with my lawyer. The money was confirmed. The trust had cleared. We were officially millionaires. $28 million to be exact. It felt like stepping into someone else's life. But by dinner, I wasn't a husband anymore. She didn't cry, didn't yell. She didn't even look away. Just said it like she was canceling a subscription. And somewhere between the shock and the nausea, all I could think about was the damn blueberries still sitting on her plate. Untouched. I stood there. In our kitchen, the stove still warm from breakfast, and I watched the woman I'd loved for 7 years, the woman who used to fall asleep on my chest, whispering how she couldn't live without me, prepare to walk away like I'd meant nothing. She didn't even ask about the money. Not once. That's what should have tipped me off. That's what should have made me suspicious. But I wasn't thinking straight. I was drowning in memories. Her laugh when we first met. The way she used to steal the blankets. The night I proposed, in a freezing parking lot outside her favorite Italian place, because I couldn't wait for dessert. I remember trying to speak, but nothing came out. My mouth moved, but my voice felt locked inside my ribs. Eventually, all I could manage was, "Why?" She paused, but not like she was unsure. More like she was choosing which version of the truth to give me. Then she said, "I'm just not in love with you anymore." And maybe she thought that would end the conversation, but it didn't. It set something in motion. She left that night. Packed 2 suitcases, gave me a kiss on the cheek, like I was her brother or something, and walked out the front door without looking back. Just like that. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch, replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out when exactly I lost her. Was it last year when my mother died and I shut down for months? Was it when I got laid off and we had to live off her salary for a while? Or maybe it was always there, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my lawyer. "Funds cleared. Clause 7 activated. Need confirmation marital status." Clause 7. My heart skipped. I opened. The original trust agreement again. The one I barely glanced at when I signed it. My uncle had passed away unexpectedly, and I'd inherited his estate. But there was a caveat. A strange one I didn't question too much at the time. He was old-fashioned, believed in marriage and loyalty, all that stuff, so he included a clause. If the beneficiary is legally married at the time of inheritance and remains married for a minimum of 1 year following the transfer, the total amount of $28 million is guaranteed. If not, the amount is reduced to $1 million, with the remainder redirected to a charity of the trustee's choice. My chest tightened. She didn't know. There's no way she knew, or did she? I sat in that silence, a war beginning to rage beneath my skin. If I told her now, if I told her the truth about the clause, maybe she'd come back. Maybe she'd pretend to love me again. Maybe she'd stay just long enough to collect the full amount. But would that be better? To live with someone who was only there for the money, or worse? What if she did know? I stared at the blueberries still sitting in the sink, staining the metal a dark, ugly purple. And I made a decision. I wouldn't tell her a damn thing. Not yet. I needed to know what she was really after. I needed to know who I'd really been, married to all this time. Because now, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was suspicious. And something told me this story was a lot bigger than I realized. We met on a Wednesday. That's the part I always remember. Not the month or the weather, just the day. I was 26, broke, exhausted, and halfway through an iced coffee I couldn't afford when she walked into the bookstore where I worked. She was looking for a novel I'd never heard of, something French and depressing. She smiled when I asked if it had a happy ending. "God, I hope not," she said. "Happy endings are so fake." I should have listened. Her name was Julia, and she wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. She was sharp, the kind of sharp that made you want to bleed just to impress her. She had this laugh that felt expensive, like something stolen from a better life. And I wanted to give her that life. I wanted to earn it for both of us. Back then, I didn't have much. My parents were gone, my job was dead end, and my biggest dream was to make enough to stop stressing about groceries. But she didn't seem to mind. She moved into my apartment after 6 months. We shared one closet, one Netflix password, one cracked coffee table. And for a while, that was enough. She believed in me. Or maybe she just believed in believing. She pushed me to go back to school, encouraged me to apply for that business grant, even helped me design the first prototype for the app that ended up getting bought out, the first domino that led to my inheritance. She made me feel like I was becoming someone, not rich, just worthy. We got married at the courthouse, no flowers, no rings. We used rubber bands for the vows, said it was poetic, how nothing real ever stays stretched forever. She kissed me hard after the I do, and for a second, I thought I had everything. But the cracks came quietly. After my mother got sick, Julia started disappearing into herself. She stopped asking me how my day was, stopped waking up with me. I'd find her staring at her phone with that strange half smile, not cruel, just absent. I tried to tell myself it was just a rough patch, that she was stressed, that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. Love, when it starts to die, doesn't scream. It whispers. And now with the money, with all the damn money, all I could think about was how none of it could bring her back. Not the version of her I'd fallen in love with anyway. That girl had vanished. Or maybe she'd never existed at all. I tried to get on with life in those first few days after she left. I met with financial advisors, signed documents, nodded, through conversations about taxes and real estate. But all the while her voice lingered in my head, haunting the edges of every decision. I want a divorce. So simple. So surgical. I avoided social media, but one night, 3 glasses of wine deep and too lonely to care, I searched her name. And there she was, smiling in a hotel lobby, standing next to a man in a suit I didn't recognize. He looked older, wealthy, the kind of guy who orders wine without checking the price. She wasn't holding his hand, but her body leaned into him in a way I'd seen before, familiar, intimate, practiced. I stared at the photo until my phone burned hot in my palm. My mouth went dry. There was a timestamp. 2 days ago, 2 days after she left me, and just like that, the sadness curdled into something else, something colder, sharper. I zoomed in, the hotel logo behind them, small but visible. She wasn't hiding. She wanted me to see, and that's when it hit me, the timing, the precision of it all. How she waited until the exact day the trust cleared to ask for the divorce. Not a week before, not after. That day, I went back through our texts from the last month, reading between the lines. How she kept asking if I'd heard from the lawyers yet, or when the money was landing. How she'd been nicer, almost. Flirtatious, the week leading up to it, laughing at my jokes again, wearing that perfume I used to like. The one she said she grew out of. She hadn't grown out of anything. She'd been playing me, and maybe, just maybe, she'd been doing it for longer than I dared to imagine. But she didn't know about the clause, which meant she thought she was walking away with half of $28 million. She was going to be very, very disappointed. Unless someone told her. That was the thought that kept me up that night. Because if Julia had a plan, if this wasn't just about falling out of love but something orchestrated, she wouldn't have done it alone. Someone helped her. Someone was guiding this. And if I wanted answers, I needed to find out who. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal, not at first. It was realizing how many times she'd looked me in the eye while already gone. That's what kept clawing at my brain. All the missed signals, the quiet glitches in the routine I'd been too blind to see. When you love someone, you explain things away. You rewrite them in real time so they don't hurt. But now, everything was playing back with new context, and the version of her I thought I knew was unraveling like a badly stitched lie. It started small. A year ago, she stopped using her nickname for me. Nico. She used to say it when she wanted my attention, or when we were curled up on the couch, our legs tangled. But one day, it just vanished. I didn't notice at the time. Or maybe I did, and I just assumed it was stress. But looking back, it was like she'd been erasing me piece by piece, no fights, no drama. Just a slow withdrawal, like someone dimming the lights in a room while you're still in it. Then came the passwords. Julia was never secretive. Her phone used to sit on the nightstand, unlocked, face up. I knew her passcode. She even let me borrow her laptop when mine crashed. But about 6 months ago, she changed everything. Claimed it was a habit from work, security stuff, nothing personal. I nodded, believed her. Because that's what you do when you're not ready to confront the truth. But now it was all lining up. Too neatly. She'd started dressing. Differently, too. Nothing drastic, but more polished. More deliberate. Blazers instead of sweaters. Perfume that smelled like money and Manhattan elevators. She stopped asking about my mom's treatment. Stopped coming to the doctor visits. "It's too hard for me," she said once, tears welling in her eyes. I remember hugging her, telling her it was okay. But it wasn't. It never was. The flashbacks hit me hardest when I was alone. In the shower, while driving, staring at my phone screen like it held answers. There was one night I couldn't shake. 4 months ago, we were at a dinner party hosted by a client of mine. Julia sat across from me, laughing too hard at another man's jokes. A financial planner, I think. Some Wall Street guy with 2 white teeth. I remember how her hand brushed his arm, just for a second, and how quickly she looked at me after, like checking for witnesses. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid. Now I know I wasn't. The strange part. There were no photos of her with the Wall Street guy online. None. Which made the picture in the hotel lobby, the one with the older man, even more unsettling. I didn't recognize him. But something about the way he stood, the way Julia's body leaned ever so slightly toward him, reminded me of how she used to lean into me in photos. That quiet magnetism that said, "We're together, whether we're touching or not." I saved the image and stared at it every night, searching for something, a ring, a name tag, a reflection, anything. But the background held the only clue I needed. Bellhurst Hotel, Midtown, New York. I looked it up. 5 stars. Discreet. A favorite for out-of-town CEOs, politicians, and people who didn't want to be found. That was when a different kind of chill set in. Not jealousy, not sadness, but the kind of dread you feel when you realize you've stepped into a game you didn't know you were playing. because if Julia had been at Belhurst with him too, days after leaving me, that meant it was planned, calculated, and that meant it wasn't just about falling out of love. It was a strategy. But why? Why would she throw away a marriage, a shared history, and, as far as she knew, millions of dollars? Unless she wasn't expecting to leave empty-handed. Unless someone had told her there was still a payday. I thought about the clause again. The one that limited her payout if we divorced too early. If she really didn't know about it, then who did? The only person I'd shared the full terms with, clause and all, was my lawyer, Ethan Burke, and Ethan was Julia's friend before he was mine, Ethan Burke. Harvard-educated, silk tie, perfectly part-time smile Ethan. The kind of man who remembered birthdays, quoted Supreme Court rulings in casual conversation, and always made sure your wine glass never went empty. I liked him. I trusted him. I let him into every crevice of my life. Not because I had to, but because I never imagined I shouldn't. But now, every interaction with him was replaying in my mind like a surveillance reel with no sound. Just subtle glances, delayed, responses, questions that at the time felt harmless. Julia seemed excited about the inheritance, he'd said once. I laughed it off. She was always excited about anything bigger than us. Apartments, plans, futures. I picked up my phone 3 times that night to call him. 3 times I put it down. I knew better than to go in guns blazing. If I was right, if he'd told her about the clause, then he wouldn't admit it, not outright, especially not over the phone, especially not to me. So I waited. I played dumb. 2 days later, I asked to meet him for drinks, casual, friendly. Need your advice on something, I said. He agreed instantly, like always. We met at Harper's on 53rd, his usual spot. Dimly lit, too many mirrors, music soft, enough to make you feel important. He ordered an old-fashioned. I stuck with soda water. I needed my head clear. He smiled like he always did, full of charm and rehearsed warmth. You holding up okay? I nodded, made a face like I was still lost, heartbroken. Yeah, I didn't see it coming. He sipped, eyes trained on mine. It's always the timing that hits hardest. And there it was, the first red flag. I hadn't mentioned the timing, not to anyone. I leaned in a little. You know what's funny? I said, keeping my voice low, careful. The day she asked for the divorce was the exact day the trust transferred. Isn't that wild? Ethan's smile twitched. Just a blink, a half-second crack, but I saw it. He adjusted his cufflinks. Coincidences happen. Sure, I said, nodding slowly. But here's the weirdest part. She didn't even ask about the money, not once. He stirred his drink. Some people don't care about that. No, of course not. It's just, you'd think after everything she might at least ask if it went through. Since I told her about the trust months ago. And there it was again, another twitch, barely perceptible. Then silence. I leaned back. By the way, I've been meaning to ask you, that clause my uncle added. What's the exact legal threshold for remaining married? Is it the day of the transfer or a full year afterward? I knew the answer. Of course I did. I'd read it 100 times since she left. But I wanted to watch him lie. Ethan didn't. Blink. You have to stay married for a full calendar year post-transfer. If you don't, the bulk of the inheritance goes to the charitable foundation your uncle selected. Only $1 million goes to you. I nodded, slowly, eyes locked on his. Right. That's what I thought. We finished our drinks, talked about nothing for 20 more minutes. But my mind was somewhere else. I walked home that night in the cold. Rain, coat open, too numb to care. The city felt unfamiliar, like I was walking through a dream I'd already woken from. The lights too sharp, the air too loud, people passing by, laughing, rushing, living. and all I could think about was how easy it was for people to betray you when they're sure you trust them. Back at home, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened Julia's old laptop. She hadn't taken it with her. She'd gotten a new one a few months ago, and I thought nothing of it. But this one, the one she used to write grocery lists, check emails, track her freelance projects, was still here, unused, untouched. I plugged it in, waited, no password. She never thought she'd need one. The first few folders were empty, or unimportant. Documents, receipts, spreadsheets. But then I found a PDF buried deep inside a folder labeled Taxes 2022. It was a scanned letter. On Ethan Burke's letterhead, dated 3 months ago, subject line, details regarding clause 7 of Nicholas Faulkner's Inheritance Trust, addressed to Julia. The blood drained from my face. I read it 3 times, 4, each word stabbing deeper than the last. He told her everything, the clause, the conditions, the payout, the consequences of divorcing early, and he signed it at the bottom, confidential as discussed. I sat in the dark, the glow of the screen painting my face with betrayal. She knew. She'd always known. Which meant her leaving wasn't some act of heartbreak or self-discovery. It was a con. And Ethan, he was part of it. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just sat there in front of the laptop, the letter still open, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The betrayal wasn't just emotional now. It was surgical, documented, intentional. I wasn't dealing with heartbreak anymore. I was dealing with a setup. Julia and Ethan had orchestrated this. And the worst part? They hadn't even needed to be that careful. They'd counted on me being too naive to see it. But they made one mistake. They underestimated how different grief looks when it turns into clarity. By morning, I had a plan. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for understanding. I needed to know how deep this went. Who else was involved? Whether the man in the hotel photo was just a new lover, or something more, a financier, a lawyer, a fixer. I started with Ethan. I pulled every file I had on him, contracts, retainer letters, even old emails. I knew he worked with other high-net-worth clients, especially those inheriting wealth for the first time. That was his niche. Young, confused, newly rich people like me who needed someone trusted to explain the fine print. I also remembered something he once said in passing, that he occasionally handled family wealth transitions for couples, helping spouses discreetly plan for life after sudden fortune. At the time, it sounded like a thoughtful service. Now, it sounded like a hustle. I went through my bank statements, looking for anything strange. And that's when I found it. A transfer. Small, easily missed. $1,500 from my joint account, the one Julia and I rarely used, to a private account. I didn't recognize. It was labeled under a company, Greyline Strategies LLC. That name meant nothing to me, but I Googled it, and it did everything to me. Greyline Strategies was a legal mediation firm, discreet, boutique, known in certain circles, for managing high-profile divorces with maximum financial advantage. The kind of place where people like Julia go when they want to leave a marriage cleanly and profitably, without lawsuits or media attention. Their tagline chilled me. "We protect your future while keeping your past in the dark," I checked. The date of the transfer, 2 weeks before she left. She was already negotiating, setting terms, drawing up a legal map for her exit while still kissing me goodnight. I closed the tab. My hands were shaking. Then I remembered the man in the photo, the one at the Bellhurst Hotel. It was time to find out who he was. I called in a favor from an old contact, Alan, a guy I knew from my college days who now worked in high-end hospitality. Security. We hadn't spoken in years, but I still had a voicemail from him congratulating me when the deal for the app went through. I called that number. He picked up after 2 rings. "Nico," he said, "took you long enough to need me." I told him I needed a name from a security photo taken at the Bellhurst. I sent him the image. I didn't explain why. I didn't have to. He owed me one, and Alan didn't ask questions if the price was right. He called back 4 hours later. "That's Charles Merrill," he said. "Goes by Chuck. High-end divorce consultant. Not a lawyer, a kind of strategist. People pay him to game the system. Offshore accounts, fake shell companies, manipulating prenups, that sort of thing." My stomach dropped. He continued. "He's worked with Burke before, a few times actually. Quietly. They keep it clean, but there's a trail. Julia, Ethan, Charles Merrill. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a business, a structure, a pipeline, designed to gut people like me, newly rich, emotionally vulnerable, still trying to believe in love. And Julia, she was the ideal executor. Beautiful, smart, disarming. She'd played her role perfectly, made me feel safe while lining up her exit, but she didn't know what I knew now. And most importantly, she didn't know that clause she thought she could beat. It had an addendum, a new one, added just before the trust cleared, because my uncle didn't trust easily, and neither should I have. The trust stipulated that in the event of a divorce initiated within the first 12 months of transfer, if there was evidence of fraud, collusion, or financial manipulation by the spouse or their affiliates, the entire sum would revert to the beneficiary in full. All I had to do was prove it, and I was getting close, so close I could taste it. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't even let her know I knew. That would have given her too much power, the kind that feeds the part of her that still thinks she's in control. Instead, I made an appointment. With Merrill. It wasn't hard to do. I used a pseudonym, said I was a hedge fund manager going through a difficult personal transition, and had heard of his services through a mutual contact. I dropped Ethan's name. That helped. The assistant booked me. For the very next afternoon, the office was in Midtown. Floor 29 of a glass-paneled building that overlooked the city like a smug king. The waiting room was sterile. Gray leather, brushed steel, abstract art that looked expensive but meant nothing. When Merrill came out to meet me, he was exactly what I expected. Tailored, tan, teeth too white for his age. A salesman wearing the skin of a therapist. He extended his hand. "Mr. Green?" "Sure," I said. "Let's go with that." Inside, he motioned for me to sit. "Tell me what brings you in." I looked around the office. Everything was designed to make people feel like they were in charge of their own downfall. That it was calculated, sophisticated, inevitable. I leaned back in the chair and smiled just slightly. "Actually, I just came to say thank you." He raised an eyebrow. "Sorry?" "For Julia," I said. "My wife, or soon-to-be ex. She said you were instrumental in helping her prepare everything." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes flickered. A crack in the facade. "I'm afraid I don't know who you're talking about." "Sure you do. Bellhurst Hotel. 3 days after she left. Remember the photo in the lobby?" Still nothing. But his jaw tightened. I continued. "Funny how careful you were, but not careful enough to keep your name out of Greyline's payments, or Ethan's email server." Now there was a reaction. Subtle, but there. He shifted in his chair. "What do you want?" he asked. "I don't want anything," I said. "I already have what I need. Enough to trigger Clause 7B of the trust. You remember that one, right?" His face went pale. "You think I won't?" "Pursue fraud?" I asked. "You think I won't take this to the board, to the press, to every client you've ever conned?" "You built a whole business out of destroying marriages for profit. You crossed the wrong one this time." Silence. I stood up. "You can tell Julia, or not. Either way, the trust stays with me. She gets nothing. Ethan gets disbarred. And you?" Smiled. "You disappear. I walked out without waiting for a reply. 3 days later, Julia showed up at my apartment. No warning, just the sound of her knock. Soft, familiar, too polite. I opened the door and looked at her. She looked tired, not disheveled, but hollow. Makeup couldn't cover that kind of regret. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't say yes. I just stepped aside. She sat on the couch, same spot she used to curl into during storms. I sat across from her, silent. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. I didn't respond. I didn't think. "You'd find out." And when I saw the clause, I panicked. Chuck told me the timeline was flexible. Ethan said there were ways around it. Stop. She did. I'm not interested in the details. I just wanted to know if it ever meant anything. Any of it. Her eyes welled up. "Of course it did. But not enough," I said. "Not enough to stay. Not enough to be honest. Not enough to fight." She didn't argue. Just sat there, crumbling. "I loved you," she whispered. "But I loved the idea of leaving more." I nodded. That was the closest thing to the truth she'd ever said. "I won't sue," she added. "I won't contest the trust. I'll sign whatever you need." I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured her a glass of water. I didn't say thank you. Instead, I said, "You should go." She looked up at me, eyes swollen, voice shaking. "Can I hug you? Just once?" I thought about it. Then I shook my head. She left without another word, and just like that, she was gone. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, it really helps. Click the video on the screen and I'll see you there.